Thank you. Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, President. Thank you, faculty. Most of all, thank all of you for letting me address you. Thank you for my family who braved all kinds of travel to be here. I cannot overstate how proud and honored I feel to be at this podium in this pretty much perfect weather with only the faintest scent of South Farms, which is, and to address you. I loved my time at U of I. I take great pride in being a University of Illinois alumnus. I'm very happy to report that your Champaign degree will actually open doors and serve as a real badge of honor out there in the real world. So you've done great. I graduated 21 years ago, which sounds like a century to me. It feels like yesterday, though. So I don't feel especially qualified to dispense any sort of life advice. I do have a few experiences on you, so I'll share a few, 3 of those. Some were good, some were awful. I hope you find them amusing and maybe useful. First one is about taking risks and getting lucky. I got insanely lucky. I was born in the Soviet Union. By the time I reached my teens in the late 80s, the country was being held together with shoestring and bubblegum, pretty much. But because it was Soviet-made bubblegum, it was actually made out of tree bark and superglue. True story. My family was worried about the political and economic instability and the rise of anti-Semitism, and they thought of immigrating to the West. And this country, United States of America, gave us the right to enter as political refugees, for which we are eternally thankful. Meanwhile, in 1986, the Chernobyl... So we're still getting out of the country, but in 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power station blew itself up in the worst recorded nuclear disaster ever, which is kind of unfortunate because Kiev, where I was born and lived at the time, was only 90 miles away. However, even though leaving everything behind, going to America was kind of a huge risk for my family, having a nuclear disaster nearby was a really good motivator. So we finally made it to the US in 1991 with about $600 between the 5 of us. I was 16, so I got to experience Chicago public schooling for 2 years and was really confused. Chicago people? I was really confused about college selection process, and my high school guidance counselor completely serendipitously said, hey, you should go to U of I because I had an amazing, unbroken 2-year streak of science fair victories, which got me some sweet state scholarships and a really nicely subsidized student loan. At the very same time, 1993, National Center for Supercomputing Applications down the street, right here, launched Mosaic, the first graphical web browser that would soon change science, commerce, information, learning, everything. And by chance, I was going to study the most relevant subject for this new age at the most relevant place to study it. And that is how I ended up at the University of Illinois on Quad Day 1993 in blazing 100-degree heat, wearing a Soviet-made flannel shirt that was buttoned all the way to the top, sporting a medium-sized fro. There are pictures to prove it. So I walked up to this gaggle of similarly dressed nerds, crowding around a computer, squinting in the bright sun, trying to see what's on the screen, and I knew I found my people, and their land was DCL, Digital Computer Lab. During those glorious days, I did not sleep very much, but when I slept in a chair in front of a computer. Once, as I was dozing off at the ACM office, which is incidentally way too plush these days compared to what we had, after a programming marathon, was too tired to go get another Mountain Dew and completely out of junk food, these 2 engineering students walked by me, and I kind of knew them. One was a year ahead of me in school, the other one was a year behind. They casually asked me what I was doing up so late, and I showed off my latest computer graphics project. They were up late because they were going to start a company. Since I enjoyed programming so much and appeared to be able to live on sugary drinks and no sleep, they said, how would you like to join us as our first vice president of engineering? Felt very risky. I could have just gone downstairs to the candy machine and procured another Dew, gotten some Snickers. and rejuvenated, I could have just gone right back up to building academic projects, graduated, maybe gotten a doctorate after grad school, probably become a computer science professor, as was my plan at the time, perhaps even a good one. I'm actually fairly sure my mom right here in the audience still is waiting for that to happen. But the choice I made that moment wound up changing my life forever. I mumbled something along the lines of, starting a company, that's rad, I'm in. Even though I had absolutely no idea what that meant. Not at all. But I was very curious, and I had nothing to lose except for my GPA. And so our first startup was born. These guys, the two that invited me, turned out to know a lot more about starting companies and lots of other things. And I pretty soon was working extra hard just trying to keep up with them. I slept even less, I programmed even more all the time, and I was having a great time. Unfortunately, we did not know quite enough. Our startup failed pretty much a year after its founding. The company did not leave much of a dent in the universe, as they say, and it sure dented my GPA. It also dented my credit score, because right before we totally ran out of money, we financed the whole thing entirely out of our credit cards. Bad idea. So basically, it was a disaster. And yet, I knew that entrepreneurship was going to be my path. It turned out that starting a business and watching it grow and working so hard actually brought me more joy than I could possibly express, and I couldn't do anything else. When I look back at that moment, I really wonder just how this fresh off the boat, risk-averse, grad school material, 19-year-old Max managed to work up the nerve to give this crazy startup thing a chance. And yes, my judgment was impaired by sleep deprivation. And I had very little to lose, but most importantly, it really was curiosity. And so I failed, but I found out who I really was. I found my calling. Which brings me to my second story, and I'll keep this one shorter, but it was too much fun to relive the days. Second story is about failure, that it always hurts, and then you live through that by staying human. One thing worth noting, despite my previous point, is that risk-taking does not guarantee immediate success. In fact, it pretty much does the opposite. After that first company failed, I stayed here, I wrapped up my degree as quickly as I could, and I kept on starting companies on campus, and they just kept on failing. 4 companies in 3 years, and each went the way of the dodo in a year or less. And I loved starting them up, coming up with one harebrained idea after another, and they just kept on failing. My girlfriend at the time got so fed up with me on this one that she actually broke up with me by ripping up my county clerk's business registration certificate right in front of my face to make a point. And the thing is, I didn't mind, because that company already failed, and I needed to register another one anyway. And so I did, and it hurt exactly the same when that one failed too. So finally I graduated, and I moved to the place where they had more venture capital than corn, and that is Palo Alto, California. And almost by accident, I met this guy, Peter Thiel, and we started a company together, and that company ended up being PayPal, and that one finally did not fail. Incidentally, I have an important public service announcement. If your account has been frozen or locked by PayPal, please do not email me or mob me after this speech. It is not my fault. I had nothing to do with PayPal for about 10 years now. After PayPal, failures seem to have finally let me off the hook. So this time I told myself, dream bigger. I'm going to start a company that's really going to change the world even more, make that dent. And none of that happened. That next startup taught me my most painful lesson in failure yet. Failing people that trust in you hurts a lot more than just failing yourself. We started a company, we built a great team, we grew extremely fast for a while, and then I got over my skis, and we almost ran out of money, and I had to lay off a bunch of employees. The feeling that you get when you are facing a room full of wide-eyed people telling them that you screwed up, you didn't budget, you couldn't raise the money, and now they have to find jobs. It is not fun. You'd think that with the number of failures that accumulated at that point in my career, my skin would have been as thick as a rhino's, but no such luck. It actually hurt terribly when I had to lay people off, and hurt even worse when I had to do it again a couple months later. A colleague of mine, who had been around his fair share of business failure, told me that day, go be a human, don't be a chief executive. We were all hurting, not just you. Instead of feeling sorry for yourself and hiding in a corner conference room, go out there and help the people you just fired pack. Show some compassion. So I did. Took some real willpower to actually walk out of the conference room and talk to people and help them and hug them. And I really expected anger and resentment. I failed them. But instead, I got back compassion and forgiveness. They understood I had tried my best, and we were all hurting, but it was slightly easier to cope with this failure as a team one last time. Stories about Silicon Valley especially very often over-glamorize failure. We shot the moon, we fell short, it didn't work, but hey, good try. That's actually not true. Failure sucks, and it hurts. There's no getting around the pain that you will experience in life as you try and it doesn't quite come together. It doesn't get a lot easier with experience. But do not let fear of failure deter you from taking those risks. Surround yourself with people who will help you cope with your darkest moments. Be human, and you will survive, and you will eventually thrive. Which brings me to my final story. That is, be with the people who make you want to be a better you. There's one trope in Silicon Valley, and the business world in general. It's that people are everything. That one is actually true. So-so business plan, an incredible team are far more likely to succeed than a mediocre team with the plan to truly take over the world. And it's not just about having the best individual contributors, or it's about their interpersonal relationships, it's their empathy for each other, it's their trust and respect. All of those things truly matter. The early days of PayPal were just as crazy as all the previous startups in Illinois that failed. We almost ran out of money twice, we changed our business model several times, we replaced our chief executive officers at a rate of 3 times per 4 months at one point. International organized crime tried to kill our company, and so did several Wall Street giants. Inconveniently, all of this happened at the same time. As PayPal grew to be a huge success, I've asked myself, what was it about the people that made up our team that enabled us to persevere, even as many competitors fell to the very same challenges? I think I know the answer now. We didn't exactly start out as an amazing team. We were all young and curious, and were willing to take huge risks, and we had nothing to lose. But the single most important factor was none of us took our spot on this team for granted. Every one of us felt the rising expectations from the rest, and so each one of us tried to be the very best of what we could be, and then improve on that. Right around those early days, I met the woman who eventually became my wife. Happy Mother's Day tomorrow. Trying to impress her became my lifelong project because keeping up with her growth has been the single most fun challenge of my life. So if there's one piece of advice I will allow myself from this podium, let it be relationship advice. Whether you're starting a company or joining one or thinking about a life partner, ask yourself, how motivated do you feel to become an even better version of yourself? If yes, you found someone or something truly special, you should join that team. Because of crazy coincidences, nuclear accident, fantastic science fair displays, if I do say so myself, I lucked into the most important innovation of modern era and met some truly amazing people who shaped my life. People whose brilliance and thirst for knowledge and quest for self-improvement pushed me to be better. The best news, you don't have to wait to meet the amazing people in your life because you've already almost certainly met them. They're right here. I followed 2 U of I friends to take the risk I never expected myself to take, to discover my life's passion, and failed all the way to an eventual lucky break. Those 2 wild and crazy guys who put up me to all this, both worked at PayPal from the very earliest days, and we still work together today on new projects. The first dozen of PayPal's software engineers were all my U of I classmates. It's been 2 decades worth of companies and projects and all sorts of fun that we continue to work together and support each other. From Yelp to YouTube, who were both founded by U of I grads from the PayPal network. The friendships you forged here at Illinois are going to turn out the most foundational, fundamental relationships of your life. Go out there and take risks to find out who you really are, fail passionately, and recover quickly, and find and hang on tight to those who make you a better you. Which brings me to my final point. Don't wait to take the first risk. As you accumulate success, especially financial success, you will start growing barnacles of comfort. Nice car you can finally afford, and a place you enjoy coming home to, and even a family. All those things don't just sound nice. They are nice, and they're a powerful motivator to change nothing. So class of 2018, whatever your definition of risk is, go experience it right now, while your entire life is ahead of you, and you have nothing or almost nothing to lose. You might just find out who you really are. Good luck. Congratulations, class of 2018. Thank you for listening.